Book of Judges, Lesson 2, Governing the Tribes. What's the difference in the judges here and the judges we think about today? These were more than just... Judges today make legal decisions. That's what they decide what's legal, what's not. What's legal in a courtroom is whatever that judge decides is, whether he's right or she's right or wrong. But these judges were more leaders, defenders. They operate in a lot of different ways, and they help keep the Jewish people alive until they could get to the time of the kings, and from the kings right up to the time of Jesus. So they filled a very special place because of the children of Israel didn't want to behave themselves and do what they're supposed to. So I got the 12 judges of Israel. I don't know how well you can read that. It's a lot of this gets small back here where you are. And that's the 12 different judges. And if you'll notice, I mentioned about the tribes last week. Othniel, who we'll be talking about tonight, is from the tribe of Judah. And he served the 8 years of oppression under King Rishathaim, and 40 years of peace. And then you had Ehud from Benjamin, tribe of Benjamin, and 18 years and 80 years of peace. And Shamgar, we're not really sure what tribe or what years, but he defended them against the Philistines, not sure what years. It's hard to fill these in a lot of times. Deborah is from the tribe of Naphtali, and who the oppressor was, the enemy was at that particular time. She served 20 years during oppression and then 40 years of peace. And Gideon was of Manasseh, tribe of Manasseh, and the oppressors were the Midians. 7 years of oppression, 40 years of peace. Then we have Abimelech. Of course, there's a note here on the date, and down at the bottom it says these dates are highly speculative based on calculating backwards from King David. So these are not exact dates. They can't be, never could be. Anyway, we're going on to Abimelech. You notice he has 2 stars beside his name, and a lot of people say he shouldn't be included as one of the judges. You notice it was only 3 years. He was one of Gideon's sons, and when Gideon died, he took over for him, and he decided the easiest way for him to take over was to kill all of his brothers, and that way he wouldn't have any competition. So he was kind of a doubtful character whether he should be included, but they include him because it has him in Judges 9. It mentions him, and of course he's of the same tribe as Gideon is. Then you had Tola. Of course, we don't know exact years. Tola from Issachar. Don't know which ones he was fighting against, but 23 years. And Jair, Gilead. You have Gilead for the next 2. Gilead is a section more so than it is a tribe. It's not one of the tribes, but it's over generally on the eastern shore of Jordan River. 3 tribes that settle there. So we have Tola from, back up. Jair. I got behind myself. Tola was Issachar. Jair was Gilead, 22 years, and Jephthah was a Gilead. He had Philistines, Ammonites, and Ephraimites. 18 of oppression, 6 under Jephthah. Ibnas, which we're not sure about anything except about 7 years he reigned. Elon from Zebulun, and then Abdon, don't know for sure, and Samson was from Dan. So you see all of these are from different tribes in different areas of Jerusalem, and I mentioned that last week talking about they weren't all necessarily, somebody in the northern tribe might not have known of some of them that were what was going on in the southern tribes, because there's a good bit of distance between them. So in order to got a couple of couple of maps I had here last week, and I had these for reference tonight, so that we can see what the land kind of looked like before they came in and took over the land, and this is the way it looked after they came in and settled all the different tribes in the different places. That red line running up through there is the route that the spies took. You remember the 12 spies that went through the land? That's roughly the route that they took as they spied out the land before they went in to conquer the land. So I thought that would give us a good comparison. This one has an overlay of modern-day Israel, so you can see in comparison to what they settled and what modern-day Israel is today. So, here's where I want to start with. Was there a nation of Israel at this time, at the time of the Judges? Because it speaks of Israel many times in the book of Judges, but it was 12 different tribes, really, 13 if you count Levi, and we'll talk about them in a few minutes. So really there wasn't a nation of Israel, but they were all the sons of Israel, the sons of Jacob, so they were all of the same group, and it would eventually become a nation. What kind of government did they have at this time? What kind of government was left to them?
Was it theism?
Okay, theism. Where was their center of government? Did they or didn't they? Where was the tabernacle? You remember the tabernacle traveled with them all through the wilderness and all the different routes and so on. And God established the law through Moses and laid down all these laws for them. This law was what was supposed to govern them, but it governed them under God. And God said, I will meet with you at the mercy seat, which is in the tabernacle behind the curtain on the Ark of the Covenant. And Shiloh is in the hill country of the tribe of Ephraim, north of Jerusalem, is where that is. And this is, if you can see here, Shiloh up here in Ephraim, and over here it is on the bigger map. That's where Ephraim is. And so there's where it would be. So the central, pretty much a central location for all the tribes. Well, if you were down here in the southern end of the southern tribes, the northern end of the northern tribes are over here in the east, how many times did you make a trip to the tabernacle? How many times did you visit it? You may never see it in your lifetime. You may not know it's there. So they had to have a form of government, had to have something to rule them, to govern them, to help them at this particular time. They weren't supposed to need judges to come in and rescue them. They had the law. They had the law of Moses. They had all the covenants that were made with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, through Moses, with them, the Mosaic covenant. All the different things they had things to govern them, but they were not good at governing themselves. So what kind of government did Israel have? They started out with a theocratic government. A theocratic government naturally is a government that's governed by God, directly by God. That would be nice if we could have that kind of government, but it's kind of hard to do. And it says in here that it was under the laws established by or through Moses that was supposed to govern them. That's the way they were supposed to know. That's the way you know what the will of God is, by the law that God left with Moses. They didn't last as long as it should. And it fell out of theocratic government into anarchy. And anarchy is what it says here in the see in red, the last scripture. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. Now, what kind of society would you have if that's what everybody was doing? And that's what they wound up falling into. They came from theocracy into anarchy. The document I have here is one you'll recognize after I get started here. Probably if you don't. You remember when the Pilgrims came over and they had a charter for a particular area. And they got blown way off course up north, and they tried to come down south where it was and got blown north again. And while they were out there, they realized, well, this must be God's will. We're going to settle here in Plymouth. And that's where they established Plymouth. But they said, we don't have a charter. We don't have anything to govern us. And what a lot of times we don't realize is the Pilgrims were not all separatists. They were not all godly people. There were other people mixed in with them as well. And they knew if they came ashore like that what they would have is anarchy. Everybody deciding what they were going to do and claiming what they wanted and doing what they wanted to do. So they wrote up this document. Having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith in honor of our King and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents solemnly mutual in the presence of God and one another covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid by virtue hereof, to enact, constitute, and frame such just equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices from time to time as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, and to which we promise all due submission and obedience, in witness whereof we have hitherto subscribed our names at Cape Cod, the 11th of November, Anno Domini 1620. How do you pronounce that? Domini is the way I usually pronounce it. So it depends on when I happen to say it. That's a run-on sentence, but that's the Mayflower Compact. They knew if they didn't have a signed compact, they wouldn't have anything to govern them. Well, the children of Israel, what was supposed to govern them was the law. They had a written documentation of what they were supposed to do. They knew what they were supposed to do. They knew how they were supposed to govern themselves. They knew there were laws in there to cover every aspect of their life if they would just follow them, but they didn't. So they went from anarchy to monarchy. And monarchy naturally is a ruler. Is one ruler, and that came about with King Saul, David, and Solomon in the kingdom, and stayed that way until it was split after Rehoboam and Jeroboam split the two kingdoms between them, and had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And that was about 1020 BC when that occurred. So they started out as a theocracy, then it devolved into anarchy when God sent judges in periodically to bail them out when they got into so much trouble. And then it devolved into a monarchy. So Israel's government changed over time, and a monarchy was supposed to... Did God want them to have a king? This is a trick question. The reason I say it's a trick question is because God wanted the right king. And so what he gave them to start with was a king that looked like a king. He was head and shoulders taller than everybody else. That he was a handsome man. He looked like a leader and turned out not to be as good a leader as he looked. And then David came along, and he was a man after God's own heart. So he it's not that he... What he needed, what God wanted was a monarch that would lead them in line with the law that was written. And that's something that Saul fell out of favor with. So, where was God to meet with his people? At the center of government. It's in Shiloh at the tabernacle where it was supposed to be in the tribe of Ephraim, which didn't work out for very long for them. And they wound up in trouble. To provide for the Levites, God commanded the Israelites to allocate cities surrounding pasture lands for them. Numbers 35, 2-3 states this. Command the Israelites to give the Levites cities to live in from the inheritance they possess. That's each tribe. And you are also to give the Levites pasture lands around the cities. The cities will be theirs to live in, and the pasture lands will be for the cattle, flocks, and all the other livestock. Why did God do this? Why do you think he split the Levites up and put some of them in each tribe? So there'd be somebody to bring the Levitical laws. So there'd be there'd be a representation of God within each one of their. So they didn't have to go all the way to the tabernacle to find out. They had Levites living within their own countries, within their own tribes that they could go to. They had whole cities of them and the pasture lands around them. So it's not like they didn't have some kind of way to know what the government was supposed to be. Judges 2:11. The Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. They worshiped the Baals and abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed other gods from the surrounding peoples and bowed down to them. They angered the Lord, for they abandoned him and worshipped Baal and the Ashtoreth. In Exodus, if you remember, and when you start from the 20th chapter, when we begin with the Ten Commandments, it says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. Do not have any other gods, or do not have other gods besides me. We started in the Ten Commandments as non-Jewish, as Gentiles. We start with do not have any other gods before you. That's our first commandment. In the Jewish Ten Commandments, they start with, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the place of slavery. So if they start with this, that tells them why. Think about it. They were worshiping all these other gods. Which one of those gods delivered them out of Egypt? None of them did. So he said, so he starts out with, I am the Lord your God. And it says in that 12th verse, and abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors who brought them out of Egypt. In other words, it's this God, the God that brought them, their deliverer. That's who they're turning against when they're worshiping these other gods. None of these other gods did anything for them to get them out of Egypt. Judges 3:7. The Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. They forgot the Lord their God and worshipped the Baals and Ashtoreth. The Lord's anger burned against Israel. He sold them to King Cushan Rishathaim. That's the tough name. So we could say, anytime you're pronouncing biblical names, just pronounce them any way you want to, because nobody knows if you're right. They really don't. So they wound up worshiping him for 8 years, or serving him for 8 years. He took over them. It says God gave them to him, and they put themselves in that position. He didn't have to do it. They quit following the God who was their deliverer. And so he was not there to deliver them. 9th verse. The Israelites cried out to the Lord. So the Lord raised up Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's youngest brother, as a deliverer to save the Israelites. The Spirit of the Lord came on him, and he judged Israel. Othniel went out to battle, and the Lord handed over King Cushan Rishathaim of Aram to him, so that Othniel overpowered him. So who was Caleb? So this helps get us to who Othniel is. So who is Caleb? There's the list of the 12 spies. I've got the 2 of them highlighted, or a little bit larger. I don't know if you can tell it. Judah, the tribe of Judah, was where Caleb was from. And if you look a little further down, you see the tribe of Ephraim is where Joshua was from. And they went in and spied out the land, and they came back, and they brought back some examples of the harvest and stuff that was there. And they said, it's indeed a land flowing with milk and honey, but there's giants in the land, and all the people got so upset they still couldn't handle them. And 10 of the spies says, we can't conquer them, we're not going in there. And Joshua and Caleb said, you don't have to worry about it. God can handle those giants just like he's handled everything else. We need to go in and take the land like God told it to. So Caleb was one of those two spies. And Othniel is the first of the 12 judges listed in here. And his judgeship is sort of during a transitional period from the original ones that came in there to the next generations, because it was Caleb's brother's son is who Othniel was. It's like in American history, our presidents, let me ask a trivia question. Who was the first president that we had that was not from New England or Virginia? It has nothing to do with this. That just hit me. It was Andrew Jackson. He was the first one that was not from there. So the first 5 presidents, you had George Washington, then you had John Adams, Then you had James Madison. Then you had James Monroe. And did I leave out somebody? I got Thomas Jefferson. Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Monroe. And then you had John Quincy Adams. And John Quincy Adams was John Adams' son. And he was sort of a transitional figure from the original founders to the next generation because he was the son of one of the original founders who became president. One of the two father and son teams that became president. The other two were both Bush. But these two, and well, we won't go any further with that. And that's kind of the tie here that Othniel has because he was the son of the brother of Caleb. So he was the son of that generation. So of the first 12 judges, that's who he was of. Judges 3:9, the Israelites cried out to the Lord. So the Lord raised up Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's youngest brother, as a deliverer to save the Israelites. The Spirit of the Lord came on him, and he judged Israel. Othniel went out to battle, and the Lord handed this king over to him. I'm not going to try it again. Of Aram to him, so that Othniel overpowered him. Then the land had peace for 40 years, and Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. And that's where I'm going to quit for tonight because we get into a different judge after that. That's all it says about Othniel. So what else you want to know about Othniel? Don't ask me, don't ask much anybody else. There's not much else about him other than what's in that few verses that we have just read. But he was the first judge of Israel. So do you have any questions or comments?